What's up, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Chicago Football Show. I'm Scott Bair alongside Carmen Vitali, and we're coming to you after a 19-16 loss to the Detroit Lions. Field goal as time expired as the Bears lose their second straight game. But the Philadelphia Eagles also lost their matchup with the Washington Commanders, which means that this game technically didn't matter.
It didn't really mean anything.
The Bears secured the number 2 seed. Schedule alert, that means they play Green Bay for a third consecutive time next weekend in the playoffs at Soldier Field. If they win that game, they are guaranteed at least one more home game at Soldier Field. That's a big deal.
It is.
Before we get to the future and what is coming up next, let's look at what happened here in this game. Carmen, it wasn't all good. In fact, there was very little of it to be impressed by. What was your kind of overall takeaway, and what did you think was a major factor in this one?
I mean, this was what the Bears have been for a while now, which is, entering the fourth quarter, Bears down 2 scores, I wasn't quite worried because tell me if you've heard that before.
Right.
And the Bears kind of pulled it out. And to be fair, the Bears tied the game up 16-16 with 2 touchdowns and 2 two-point conversions to make this a game by the end of it. And, Detroit had their opportunity to go down the field, kind of bleed the clock a little bit, and then get that last-second field goal. But this was a game until the very end, and as it has been so much with the Chicago Bears, but the issue has been not getting a fast enough start, not getting enough points on the board. Going into the fourth quarter, you were down 16-0 as the Chicago Bears. That's not going to fly in the postseason, and it was certainly not going to fly against a Detroit Lions team that, while they have nothing to play for when it comes to postseason, they still have a lot of pride, pun intended, given that they are the Lions.
Yeah.
This is Dan Campbell. The thing they like to do most is play spoiler, and they know that Ben Johnson wanted to get the win against his former team, as he didn't get it in week 2. This was his opportunity, and they wanted to deny him of that, even with all of the injuries that Detroit was dealing with. Guys like Penei Sewell did not play in this game, multiple guys along their defense, and yet it still ended up being kind of a defensive game because it was only a score of 19-16. I came into this game, I don't know about you, Scott, I came into this game thinking it was going to be another shootout like we saw in San Francisco in a high-scoring game, and that's not exactly what we got. But both of these teams were motivated in their own ways. Now the Bears, where some of the other teams in the NFC got to rest their guys, rest their starters, Bears didn't quite get that luxury, and they didn't unfortunately get the win.
Yeah, and I think hindsight is 20/20, right? But Green Bay, who had the 7 seeds secured before Sunday's action even started,
they couldn't move.
But they sat virtually everybody, including Jordan Love and Christian Watson and Josh Jacobs, so they will be fresher.
They will.
The Philadelphia Eagles, a possible round 2 opponent, also rested all of their guys.
Yes.
Now, there's different strategies, and I think that Ben Johnson explained it well, saying that we have goals that we want to achieve even beyond the win in Week 18 to continue to progress.
Yeah.
C.J. Gardner-Johnson was the only kind of significant injury. We don't really know about that.
Yeah, how
but
severe.
As you look back on it, which is easier for us, do you think Ben Johnson should have sat everybody, or was going for the number 2 seed, even though you didn't get it, still the right move?
I mean, at the same time, as much as they were obviously going for the 2 seed to kind of control that aspect and make sure that they got the 2 seed on their own terms, I do think a lot of this had to do with Ben Johnson beating his former team. I mean, think about the culture that Ben Johnson has built here in Chicago and how tough, physically and mentally tough he wants his players to be. And he wants his team to play for him, and he wants to be able to coach for this team. You've seen the relationship between him and Caleb Williams blossom. You know that these guys have taken to Ben Johnson and wanted to win this game for him to kind of stick it to his former team, because I've said it so many times this season. I said it even before Ben Johnson got to Chicago. This is one of the pettiest coaches that you will ever come across. Compliment. It's a compliment. And that's when it comes to games like this where there's just a little bit extra on the line. I mean, that I think had a lot to do with the reason that he really tried to go out and win this game, knowing that, Philadelphia was going to rest their starters. They announced early in the week that Jalen Hurts would not play in this game. And so you thought maybe you could get away with also resting at least some of your guys. And that wasn't the case because it was the Detroit Lions that were coming in. And again, there was pride on the line. So I'm not here to say whether that was the right or the wrong decision. I do think that there's something to be said, too, when you rest your starters, that you go into the postseason potentially with a little bit of rust, and that's a risk in and of itself.
Right.
So it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. And this was the way Ben Johnson wanted to handle it. It is his first time at the helm as a head coach. We'll see how it pays off next week. But I do think that there were some things that they figured out in this game, not only matchup-wise with the Lions, obviously, but just kind of about learning about their offense, learning about what, evaluating the defense. And if there was one saving grace to the Bears' defensive performance today, it was that red zone defense.
Yep, 100%. 1 for 4.
1 for 4. Detroit had to settle for a lot of field goals there, and it kept the game within reach. It kept the game within 2 scores that they could go and tie it up in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I think that was huge. And if you look at the last 3 games as a block, that's the win over Green Bay, the loss to San Francisco, and the loss to the Lions, they're giving up a lot of explosives. They're giving up a lot of yards. The difference between those 3 games is in San Francisco, they couldn't stop anybody in the red zone, but they were finding ways to only give up 3 as opposed to 6 or 7. Yeah. Now, we've talked about this. Takeaways and late game heroics are not sustainable. No. At sometimes the magic runs out. The fairy pixie dust is no longer there, and you get yourself in some trouble, like what happened with the 49ers and what happened even here against the Lions. And it's too late to reinvent the wheel at this point. You have who you have, and the state of their health is in a lot of flux, I think, with some of the big stars like Tremaine Edmonds doesn't look like he did pre-injury. Jalen Johnson obviously had major surgery. They have really talented players who maybe don't look as good as they normally do. But I do think that they've got to find a way to be better on first and second down, set up those third down opportunities, because that's what they haven't done lately. That's what got them into trouble and allowed long and sustained drives, which when you combine that with the fact that the Bears offense was going 3 and out and their passing game was completely disjointed, that's where you run into trouble. Now, look, we've been negative Nancys for most of this podcast, but you pointed something out that I think is important, is that we're seeing the Bears tight ends kind of
really ascend,
take off.
Really, it seems that, and I said this even against San Francisco, and it does look like Caleb Williams has really taken control of this offense, command of this offense, and I think a lot of that has to do with having a guy like Colston Loveland as a safety blanket. I mean, that's what tight ends are supposed to be, right? They're supposed to be that really reliable target in the short to intermediate areas of the field. And then when you have a guy like Colston Loveland, the beauty of him, and I think I pointed this out against the Packers the first time around, it's you can beef up your protection, you can add extra linemen, and even especially in those goal line situations, and so many teams doing that have to kind of forfeit receivers. Well, if you keep the tight ends on the field, Colston Loveland is as good as of a receiver, especially with the rapport that he's created with Caleb Williams. And so you saw that today, 12 targets for Colston Loveland.
Wow.
He led the team in receiving yards. He had that crazy touchdown catch in the back of the end zone, followed by another insane catch by another tight end, Cole Kmet, for that 2-point conversion to tie it up. This was, I looked it up, they were in those 2 tight end sets, the offense was 57.7% of the time today. So that's a majority of the offensive plays were with those 2 tight ends on the field. And I asked both Colston Loveland and Caleb Williams about that. I said, is that something that you've identified as a strength with this offense, or was that more of a matchup thing? They both told me it was absolutely the matchup that they thought would give them the best chance against what the Detroit Lions do defensively. But I do think that is a strength, especially when you're talking about a guy like Colston Loveland and the rapport that he's built with Caleb Williams. Yeah,
it's been impressive, and I don't think Caleb wasn't good early, but his receivers weren't helping him out. Like, there were some catchable but kind of difficult balls that were falling to the turf. He did have one interception in the end zone, a long time since he's had a pick where he kind of put the ball in harm's way. He fell short of 4,000 yards.
He did, just barely. But he did break the single season passing yards record for the Chicago Bears.
I can't believe
this. Surpassing Eric Kramer
from 1995, which seems wild. And it was interesting to me as a relative newcomer to this area how passionate the city of Chicago was about getting the 4,000 yard weight off of their back.
They're the only team in the league that has never had a 4,000 yard passer,
which
and especially
is wild to me
when you consider that the season has extended to 17 games,
right?
And it's become such a passing league. It's it is an absolutely insane thing that as franchise, like the Chicago Bears, wouldn't have a 4,000-yard passer. That is the monkey on Chicago Bears fans' backs, and it's something that I think everyone holds over them as a team, and to some degree, rightfully so, because again, of all of those things where this league is kind of set up for the passing game. So I know that Caleb he needed 270 coming into this game. I believe he fell 54 yards short.
Something like that.
58 yards shy of 4,000 for the season, but that did get him past Eric Kramer's record. So no matter what, Caleb Williams will be etched in Chicago Bears history books because he is now the single season passing yards record holder for the Chicago Bears without still having gotten to 4,000 yards.
But I think I think there's been 128 people who have crossed. Obviously, some people multiple times, but that threshold's been crossed 128 times by the other 31 teams, including some that have only been around since the 90s.
Yes.
Safest bet on planet Earth. Caleb Williams will cross 4,000 at some point, health permitting.
Health permitting, yeah. I have to think so. And especially in this first year under Ben Johnson, I mean, most of these games have seen the Bears run the ball at least half the time, if not more. So there just actually haven't been as many opportunities as maybe there will be going forward when Ben Johnson trusts that Caleb Williams is seeing the field like he wants him to and really has full command of this offense. I think it's only a matter of time, though. I'm with you.
Yeah, and I think as we move forward with the Chicago football show, we are going to steer it towards the playoffs, which are coming in a week against the oldest rival in the sport.
Yes.
That's going to be fun. Week 18 has now been flushed from the show after the break. Carmen and I will break down this matchup and how the Bears need to get better before they play Green Bay. 2, 1. Welcome back to the Chicago Football Show. I'm Scott, and that's Carmen, and we are moving forward towards the NFC playoffs. The Bears are officially the number 2 seed, as we explained before, not because of what happened here at Soldier Field, but because the Eagles lost to the Washington Commanders. They are the 2. The Green Bay Packers, who also rested everybody, are the 7.
Yes.
That's setting up a big matchup. The NFL playoff schedule hasn't been released to this point.
Right.
Think it might be the Sunday night game.
I think it might be the Sunday night game too. If I know anything, the NFL understands this rivalry and how incredibly polarizing it is, and it being the Bears-Packers being the oldest NFL rivalry means something. It means something.
How dramatic these games have gone.
Both games against the Packers have just been extraordinarily dramatic, up to and including this last one at Soldier Field a couple weeks ago, where the Bears needed a once-in-my-lifetime sequence of events to happen when it comes to an onside kick, and then all this stuff inside, like up against the clock, and this, that, the other, and just an insane touchdown pass to DJ Moore. I mean, I've been watching this rivalry my entire life, Scott. I think that was the best game between the two of them that I have ever seen. It was certainly one of the weirdest, and it ended up well for Bears fans, but you have to think that is the last taste in the mouth of the Green Bay Packers that they've had for the Chicago Bears.
They've lost 4 straight.
And I was getting there, yeah. They've lost 4 straight going into the postseason. Mm-hmm. If Matt LaFleur is as good of a coach as he is thought to be, he will have his team angry and motivated to come into Soldier Field and to beat the Chicago Bears, their biggest rival, their oldest rival, and not let Ben Johnson get that second win that he promised in his opening press conference. If you weren't there for it, if you live under a rock, Ben Johnson in his opening introductory press conference said he liked beating Matt LaFleur twice a year.
He didn't say the Packers. He said Matt LaFleur.
He said Matt LaFleur specifically. And turns out the two don't know each other, as Matt LaFleur pointed out multiple times after that. So this is something that, Ben Johnson has drummed up. This is obviously a huge rival, but Ben Johnson is going to want to get that second win over Matt LaFleur, up to and including because he wants to advance into the postseason in his first year at the helm of the Chicago Bears.
All right, well, let's take the fans inside of the press conference rooms and the locker room. Mm-hmm. Was there anything that there was a lot of guys who weren't really excited about talking, I would say.
No.
And it's obvious why, because they were frustrated.
Yes.
But was there anything that stuck out to you that anybody said that you're like, okay, they're on the right track, or like anything
Yeah, I mean, we
powerful.
talked to a couple of guys. You talked to Colston Loveland, who, has bought into this rivalry. He was not at all, really. He wasn't really about the interview. And a lot of these guys weren't. A lot of these guys were mad, and they didn't want to finish the season with a 2-game losing streak, which is coincidentally how they started the season, 0-2. And Caleb Williams even brought that up. I think Ben Johnson even brought that up, that they were 0-2 to start the season. They finished the season 0-2. That leaves a bad taste in their mouths. Regardless, that's not how they wanted to go into the postseason. They wanted to go into the postseason securing the second seed on their terms. So I think everybody is mad. And they should be, because that can be used as motivation. You're going to need every ounce of motivation that you can get once it becomes the postseason, which is a new season. And that's something that we heard echoed throughout the locker room, where, the 2025 regular season is over. So many guys, the postseason is a new season, essentially, because it is win or go home. The stakes are completely different. The margin of error is completely different. The teams are even different. These are the best of the best that have made the postseason, and they're the best of the best that you're going to have to go against. So, guys, they're very well aware of the fact that they're playing the Packers, and I think that we're going to see this week leading up to the game that rivalry reignited, just in the way that it was during the regular season.
Yeah, I made a point to speak with every team captain. Obviously, Caleb goes at the podium, and you were there for that. I just wanted to touch base with everybody. And the first guy that I talked to was Joe Tooney, the guy who's won a division all but 1 year of his entire career. And won 4 Super Bowls.
Yes.
And he's kind of a soft-spoken guy, but just what's the messaging from leadership as they move into the postseason?
Yeah.
There are a lot of guys who have been brought in here who have postseason experience. The homegrown kids don't.
No.
So it was about that. And Joe Tooney said that the message is really very simple. It's about understanding that every detail matters. Yeah. Every moment you spend in preparation matters. And you don't want to look back at the week as a missed opportunity or that you wasted any time. It's about focus, it's about detail, and it's about understanding that this is what you play for. And that really kind of struck me, I think, as and the messaging was generally the same type of thing for most of these guys. Kevin Byard has been to the postseason, obviously. Grady Jarrett has been to a Super Bowl back in his rookie year. So there is some experience, there is some leadership that I think can be helpful at a time like this as they start to move forward.
I mean, that's why you went and you paid as much money as you did for a guy like Joe Tooney, who has all of this experience, because not only is he a phenomenal player, Pro Bowl level player, this is a guy that knows what it takes to get to a Super Bowl with multiple teams, which I think is even more like that's a demarcation that I think needs to be talked about a little bit more, because not only did you see how the Patriots did it, but then you saw how the Chiefs did it too. And those are two there's not one way to reach the Super Bowl. But there are similar characteristics that you need to carry over. And I think that being on 2 different Super Bowl winning teams, Joe Tooney is uniquely qualified to really be that guy that people can lean on in that locker room. And I mean, when you come in with a pedigree like that, guys take notice. I know Caleb Williams has taken notice with how much he's talked to Joe Tooney and his entire offensive line, some of which are veterans, and realizing that Caleb, this is only his second year. It's his first postseason trip in the NFL. So leaning on the experience in the locker room is going to be key, just for all of, like you were talking about, Scott, the minute details in the week leading up, during practice, staying locked in, making sure there's no wasted time and there's no what ifs when you get to game day. Yeah,
I think that's going to be key. What's the biggest thing that just has to get fixed before next week?
There's a lot, I feel like, with the defense. What we saw today out of Detroit, which was, they were hitting explosive after explosive, and it was to all of the usual suspects. When you talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown, who had 110 yards in the first half, that's a guy that you're going to have to account for. That's a guy that Jared Goff is going to throw to, and you have to be able to limit those plays. It can't be so hot and cold. You can't rely on takeaways. More than you can't rely on takeaways, you can't rely on the offense then to make sure that they kind of take advantage of those takeaways, because as we saw towards the end of this Detroit game, they did get a takeaway. They did pick off Jaquan Brisker, tipped the pass, and it landed in Kevin Byard's arms. It was a great play.
It seemed to be setting up for another big Bears
win, and then the offense gets hit with that intentional grounding. It's 3rd and 20, and they end up punting back to Detroit, who then bleeds the clock and comes out with the win on the last second field goal. That kind of stuff is not going to fly against these teams in the postseason. The run defense, I think, needs to be shored up a little bit more, and I think that's a testament to making sure your linebackers are healthy, making sure you're sealing those edges a little bit more, and affecting the quarterback. I mean, that's not... We did see a couple sacks on Jared Goff today.
We did.
But that's something that's going to need to continue because you are going in the postseason. Defense winning championships is a phrase for a reason, and that's because when the margin for error gets this small in the postseason, you need to be able to affect the opposing quarterback. It's not enough to score points. You cannot count on being able to go out there and score 35 points or whatever it is, even if your offense is firing on all cylinders. You're going to need to slow down the opponent as well.
It seems like teams have gotten to the end of the season, and they're saying, we are not going to let the Bears' run game beat us.
Yeah.
Right? That there's a concerted effort, especially early, to slow some of those guys down. I think it's important, and it's not necessarily something that has to be fixed, but I think this Bears offensive line needs to understand that when the Bears were at their very best, they were... That offensive front was the on-field leadership.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they need. They need to reclaim the time of possession. They need to reclaim the first quarter. They had been good in the first quarter and have struggled recently. And that's something that I think they need to be better setting the tone.
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing.
I think what you saw too over some of those Bears wins where the offense was putting up a ton of points, they were controlling the line of scrimmage, they were controlling the clock because the offensive line in particular was engaging defenders. They weren't just sitting back, they weren't just playing in pass protection, they weren't just sitting back within their blocks or minding their gaps. They were going out and engaging the opposing defensive line. They were moving the line of scrimmage. That's what I always look for when I'm watching. I watch a lot of the trenches. That's kind of my thing, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm such an offensive line guru. I love the defensive line too. I think the games are won and lost in the trenches, and because of that, I watch the line of scrimmage very, very closely during these games. And what you want to see offensively is your guys over the line of scrimmage
100%.
Before the defenders get a chance to. And it's hard to do. It's hard to be that dominating. It's hard to be that physical, but that is what Ben Johnson has tried to instill in this team all season long. And we've seen flashes of it. It's come against maybe not the best competition, and now you're going to have to figure out a way to do that against some of the best defenses in the league, in the conference, depending on how far you go. And that starts with Green Bay next weekend, whether that's Saturday or Sunday, we'll see.
Yeah, and let's talk quarterback here. This is going to be Caleb Williams' first ever playoff game, but he is not afraid of the moment. That's very clear in talking to him. And you see some of these plays where your jaw just drops.
Yes.
And it's about finding, and he keeps the ball out of harm's way generally.
Yes.
And that's another good thing for the postseason. I mean, he obviously has to be at his best, both in terms of controlling, setting up the run game at the line of scrimmage, but making special plays downfield, because we've seen Jordan Love and what he can do if his back foot hits the final spot in his
those fadeaway
footwork.
Jumpers of Jordan Love's.
So I really think that, it's a dumb question. What does Caleb Williams need to do? But I think it's about consistency maybe.
Yeah.
But there are going to have to be times where he needs to be special. Finding the good balance hasn't always been easy,
right?
But he's got to find it here.
I think he needs to pick his spots. I think it's as simple as that. I think he needs to trust the play calls. I think he needs to trust Ben Johnson's vision for the game plan. I think he needs to trust Ben Johnson in the moment when these play calls are coming in. Ben Johnson, in turn, has to get those play calls in on time, quickly, where he said against San Francisco, he talked about how he didn't get those play calls in soon enough to let Caleb kind of survey the defense, see what he's looking at, see if it's going to work. I really want to see Caleb trust that process, though, and then pick his spots for some of those superhuman plays. I mean, I don't know if there's anyone else in the league that could make that throw to Cole Kmet for that 2-point conversion to tie the game up in this Lions game. There are so many throws like that where Caleb Williams is throwing across his against his momentum, across his body, off platform, and he delivers a strike with so much power, despite the fact that he didn't set his feet. there's no one else in this league that can do that. And it's really tempting to try and do that all the time. But if you're Caleb Williams, that needs to come at good moments, at responsible moments, and you need to trust the game plan that Ben Johnson is going to put in your hands for this game against Green Bay.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be key. It's going to be fascinating to watch and see how this postseason unfolds. If it's one game or two or four, you don't really know, but it's going to be a fascinating watch.
And on a programming note, we are sorry to say this will actually be the last episode of the Chicago Football Show. I want to personally thank you guys for, being on this ride with Scott and I for the last year and a half or so. We wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't for you all tuning in. It's been so special for me personally to be so visible in this wonderful market that I have called home for so long, that I grew up in. So thank you for that. And we're so excited to have worked with everybody at Marquee.
Yeah.
Huge shout out to the guys behind the scenes. It's been a wonderful experience, and we're sorry to be signing off.
Yeah, it's just been a lot of fun getting to work with you over the last 2 years, and so many loyal listeners who've been with us back when it was the Bears on the Marquee podcast.
Yeah.
Absolutely so much fun to get to know everybody through this show. But fear not, the official post-game show, Bears Den and Bear Essentials, will still be on during the playoffs, so download the Watch Marquee app for that. So for one final time, for Carmen, I'm Scott. We'll talk to you later.
Bye, guys.
Hola! Hey, Falcons clean house.
What?
Falcons clean house.
Falcons